The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
You want a lot going on? We've got a lot going on. Jimmy Hyams will join us thanks to Ray Varner Ford. They're in Clinton. Ray Varner Ford will take care of you. Jimmy Hyams joins us to talk about the Vols partnership with Pilot. I like it more than I did yesterday, but I'm not completely 100% on board. It may be mandatory, though, given how teams are going to have to spend money in revenue sharing. Also, Joe Milton's early NFL success, how does that reflect on Josh Heupel? Tennessee's injury concerns. Last year, I don't think there's any doubt that season was derailed / sidelined by injury. Not only Cooper's injury, but Joe Milton was banged up at times. Injuries were a factor. Brew McCoy. So who are the Vols that Tennessee cannot lose? What would the Vols be valued at? I want to ask you that question because the Dallas Cowboys valued at $10 billion, which is unbelievable to me. Shane Beamer kissing up to the Vols a little bit. College football teams on the rise. We're with you for the next 90 minutes or so. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dave?
Fantastic. So before we get Jimmy in here, we were live on the air when the Pilot Tennessee merger agreement was announced. What are your thoughts now that we've had time to sleep on it?
I still don't love it because nothing I said yesterday from a substantive standpoint changes from the sense that I don't believe that Pilot is just going to be content to let it be called Neyland Preserved by Pilot. I think that's the start. I think that's the start of it eventually becoming Pilot Stadium in 20 years. And I've just seen this. It happens in the NFL. What happens with bowl games? It happens all the time with corporations. They start with, oh, we'll keep the name, but we'll be, sponsored by our company. And then it becomes, let's just make it our company. Why do we do that? Well, why do we need to sponsor it? Let's just make it Pilot Stadium. That's coming in 20 years.
So we can agree on this. If that doesn't happen, then Tennessee got a sweet deal. If it does, then we revisit in 20 years. But specifically what we know right now, and that is Pilot is going to be on the field. That's something we didn't know as it broke while we were on the air yesterday. So your thoughts on, there's already 9 of 16, I'm told, from the SEC teams that will have on-field sponsors. I don't like the look of it. I don't like Pilot or anybody else being down there. No offense. But I'll tell you what, it may just be mandatory, Caleb, because the revenue sharing that's about to come out, if you haven't heard, Caleb, describe what that means, because this is in addition, essentially, to NIL. Revenue sharing from the TV networks that the University of Tennessee and all schools are going to have to start paying out. That's what they're doing. This is a preemptive strike.
Yes, this is getting out ahead of things with NIL. And I want to say this, and because people are accusing me of speaking out of turn on Danny White yesterday. I don't think Danny White doesn't value Tennessee tradition. I didn't say that. Danny White took the job in 2021. He's thinking about things from a certain perspective while trying to understand tradition, but that doesn't mean he's going to get everything right. I mean, this is just what happens with athletic directors that you hire that aren't steeped in the program that you hire. He comes from UCF and he comes from Buffalo. In those places, he was trying to start tradition. That's his experience as an athletic director, is starting tradition, not building on tradition. And it is a little bit trickier. No, I'm not going to say it's trickier. It's just different when you're building on tradition.
All right, let's bring in our very special Wednesday guest. It's football time in Tennessee or close. Hit that like and subscribe button, please, when Jimmy Hyams joins us. Jimmy, I hope you're doing well, sir. Have you had a fantastic summer?
Yes, it's been a very busy, very active summer. Couple of weddings, went on a golf trip. So playing a little golf and tennis. It's been very active. Yes.
Nice. All right. And I know you got that beautiful grandson
Yes.
as well that we love seeing pictures of on Twitter, especially my wife. She's always like, did you see Jimmy's latest tweet? All right, Jim, let me get big picture, because Caleb and I were kind of caught, and you've been caught in this situation before where something breaks on the air. So that's what happened yesterday with the Pilot and Tennessee thing. And quite frankly, we didn't have all the information at the time. We do now, and you have all the information. So what is your first impression of this partnership that supposedly is going to keep Neyland Stadium in place, but gets Pilot very, very, very involved with the football program once again?
Well, first off, when I got wind of this on Sunday, I was led to believe they were changing the name of Neyland Stadium. And I thought, whoa, that's not going to work. Then when I found out the details of what they're doing, this is an opinion. I don't have fact on this, but this is what I believe. So Tennessee's trying to raise some money. So they took Thompson Bowling Arena and basically made it the Food City Center. All right, that ruffled some feathers, including the Thompson family, which I was told wasn't told about it beforehand, which got somebody in the athletic department fired. In this case, I think that I'm okay with Pilot having its name around the stadium and doing this kind of stuff. I'm all right with that, as long as they preserve Neyland Stadium and, to a lesser degree, Shields Watkins Field. I think Jim Haslam was behind that. Jim Haslam has the utmost respect for General Neyland. And I think that he wanted to ensure that, by golly, they were not going to change the name of it from Neyland Stadium and to Pilot or anything else. So they lent the name of Pilot. They paid these rights to do this, but they ensured they're keeping the name of Neyland Stadium for at least the next 20 years or longer. And I think he had a say-so in this. I really do. Don't know it. That's just my opinion based on his admiration for General Neyland.
Jim, I want to ask you about that because we thought the same thing. And I got an email from Pilot and a PR person saying that the Haslams had no involvement with Pilot whatsoever, and you had the Berkshire Hathaway. But I have trouble believing there's zero connection whatsoever, Jim.
Do you think Warren Buffett gives a rat about whether or not it's Neyland Stadium or Pilot? No. Again, it's an opinion. I haven't talked to anybody about it, but I just know how Jim Haslam feels about General Neyland, and I feel strongly that there was a say-so that came from him, and not necessarily from Jimmy, but from Jim, the dad,
Right.
Because I think that he felt like he was not. And see, I think there's been some controversy about this Thompson Bowling Arena going to Food City Center because the media was told you can say Thompson Bowling, and then every other reference has to be Food City Center. Okay, well, you can't tell the media what to say, but that's what they were told on TV and radio broadcasts. That's how they're supposed to handle it. So basically, it's shoving the name of Thompson Bowling aside, and I'm convinced that Jim Haslam did not want that to happen with Neyland Stadium. So that's why they've gone in the direction they have gone.
Okay, if you have any questions for Jimmy, go ahead and put them on our message board, and we'll get to those. Message board today brought to you by Don Self, State Farm. Don Self customer service still matters. For 40 years, they built their business on taking care of their customers. The greater Chattanooga area, call 423-396-2126 or go to donself.net. Right below donself.net. And I remind you, because I know that Caleb's chomping at the bit to ask Jimmy some questions. I remind you that Jimmy's appearance brought to you by Ray Varner Ford. Give me 15 seconds, and here goes Caleb.
Hybrid, $25,515. 23 Ford Escape, all-wheel drive, $30,995. 24 Ford F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $59,757. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
All right, Caleb, what do you got?
All right, so Jimmy, let me set this up to you because you said Big Jim, and I actually do. We didn't say that I call him Big Jim, but like I do believe you that Big Jim may be involved. But let me just set this up real quick, because as this was breaking yesterday, Forbes was still listing Jimmy Haslam as chairman of the board at Pilot, which he's not. And the Haslam family has completely exited all ties with Pilot. That happened earlier this year, where they finally all sold their stake to Berkshire Hathaway, so Berkshire Hathaway has complete control. But you think Big Jim Haslam is involved with this name, which suggests that the Haslams, despite, by the way, they did have a rocky exit, the Haslams in Berkshire. It was not amicable, the split. But it suggests that the Haslams are still involved with Pilot to a certain degree. If that's the case, is this another way for Jimmy Haslam, who is the most responsible person for the decade of dysfunction, to weasel his way back into power at the University of Tennessee?
No.
You don't think you don't think he has any power still?
No, he's still trying to figure out what to do with the Browns. I think that's where his focus is. I do not think it's with Tennessee. I think he's almost divorced himself from Tennessee since he took over for the Browns. So here's the way I think this went down, Caleb. And again, this is conjecture. I haven't talked to anybody. I think that so there was an interest from Danny White to try to get some money for Neyland Stadium, some kind of naming rights deal. And I actually think that Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett, out of respect to Jim Haslam, said, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. And I think he said, this is the way you should do it, or this is what I would be okay with, as long as you keep the name Neyland on that stadium. So I think there was some conversation about that. And Jim Haslam, I think, said, this is okay if you do it this way. But to think that Jim Haslam or the Haslam family had nothing to do with this, any input on this, I'm not in that camp.
No, and Warren, you brought up the greatest point. Warren Buffett is not sitting around thinking about, how can I promote this chain of convenience stores on a stadium? Besides that, if somebody came to him and said, you need to make concessions, it's not going to be Pilot Stadium, he'd probably say, who the H is General Neyland, and why can't it be mine if I'm paying this money? It has to be some Haslam influence.
I think so. And I could be proven wrong down the road, but that's what I think. That's my initial impressions. And again, that's an opinion. That's not having talked to anybody about this, the way it went down, but that's what I think happened.
Okay, I want to ask you about the on-field sponsors. I remind you, the show represented by Banks & Jones, banksandjones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Jimmy, I was told that 9 of 16 of the schools currently have an on-field sponsor, which is going to be Pilot down around the 35-yard line, and the rest of them will by the end of the season. On-field sponsors, you're a little old school like me. Did you like it? What are your thoughts on it?
I'm not crazy about it, but I understand it. And I know that these schools are now going to have to pay, what is it, $23 million to the student athletes, however they're going to chop this up. So people talk about, well, look at they got a $200 million budget. They got plenty of money to do this. The problem is a lot of that's already allocated. A lot of it's allocated to coaching salary. It's allocated to scholarships. It's allocated to renovations of stadiums and so forth. So for them to just snap their finger, and what happens is they're having to pay this money. And I'm not just talking about the SEC. This is supposed to cover all the Division I NCAA schools, right? What are there, 130 some odd that are in Division I, and then you've got 340 NCAA Division I basketball programs. So they've got to figure out how to raise money. And it's not that the Arkansas or the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Tennessees and Floridas are hurting for the money. It's the ones that are in the middle level or lower that are going to be struggling financially to find this. But I'm not surprised at all at this move and trying to get as much money as they can from this. In fact, I'd kind of be surprised if they didn't go the other way. Not a huge fan of it, but I understand it.
So, quick follow-up to my last question, Jimmy, then I want to ask one more question. But you say Jimmy Haslam has divorced himself entirely. Was that really when he bought the Browns, or was that after the whole Schiano fiasco? Because I thought it was after the Schiano fiasco where he finally divorced himself from Tennessee. Because
that's pretty close in time, isn't it?
He bought the Browns roughly in like 2012, 2013.
Yeah, and so he was on that committee, and another person that was prominent on that committee was Peyton Manning. And both of them signed off on Greg Schiano. Both of them did. And then when all hell broke loose, both of them acted like they didn't know that had ever happened. So
yeah.
they couldn't hear from either one of them. But I think to your point, I think Jimmy Haslam pretty much divorced himself after the Schiano fiasco. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so wait, I was going to get to just one last thing with this. And it's funny because Peyton Manning cut a promo video yesterday too for the whole pilot thing. But where I was going to get in, something I talked with Dave yesterday, the thing that bothers me about this is when it comes to corporations and the corporate takeover of America, and I'm not trying to sound like some communist over here, but I'm just trying to say that like what corporations tend to do is they start just like, okay, we'll put our name on something. Okay, maybe we want to take over a little bit more here. Maybe we want to take over a little bit more here. And then one day you wake up and your entire life is controlled by it. So I think bowl games for a minute, Jimmy, it used to just be the Sugar Bowl, or it used to be the Citrus Bowl. Then it became the Capital One Citrus Bowl. And then they said, hey, let's just make it the Capital One Bowl. How do we know that this isn't just the start of Pilot doing this to ease us into them one day saying, hey, we want to be Pilot Stadium, and we want you guys to be the University of Pilot when you wear our jerseys?
Could that conceivably happen? Yeah, but it'll be at least 20 years, right? And I won't have to worry about it. But yes.
Caleb, that's going to be on you, buddy.
Yeah, I won't care about that. But is it possible it could go that way? It's possible. My goodness, don't you have a bowl game named after a comedian?
I think you do.
It's Jimmy Kimmel Bowl.
Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's possible down the road that could happen. I do think it's possible. But, again, this is at least a 20-year deal. So that's a long time down the road before that could come into play.
Something to shoot for. I mean, Jimmy, I've had a sushi roll named after me, a margarita named after me. What if we did an off the hook bowl game? That's something to shoot for, right?
Caleb Calhoun bowl game. I like it.
I mean, the Hooker Bowl does sound pretty awesome, guys. Put it in Vegas.
Get your John package close to you. By the way, if you would like to, I will mention really quick because I want to see what the screen does when I share this. You can join Hooker's Corner and be eligible for some fantastic prizes. There's the QR code, Hooker's Corner, just $9.98 a month. And we're giving away this helmet, mini helmet, autographed by Joe Milton later this month, as well as weekly T-shirt prizes. Be a member, increase recruiting coverage, and also more interaction with me and Caleb, which, Jimmy, I'm sure everybody wants, right?
Oh, yeah. No question.
Caleb, our next conversation with Jim is one that we continue to come back to because it's odd to me, Jimmy, as good as we believe Josh Heupel is with quarterbacks, right, that you had a questionable decision to go with Milton over Hooker. And now Milton's doing better in the preseason. So there's kind of a contradiction there of whether or not Josh Heupel is getting the best out of his quarterbacks or he's not. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's only one example where he didn't get the best. I thought Hendon Hooker was an outstanding quarterback. Now, looking back on it, I thought Heupel made a mistake naming Hooker naming Milton the quarterback over Hooker. Okay. Hooker proved to be a better quarterback. Hooker fit the system. In my opinion, Joe Milton didn't fit the system. He is more of, in my opinion, a pro-style quarterback. And so could he have a better pro career than a college career? It's possible. But I'm not going to get too excited about what he's doing in a preseason game in which they're playing vanilla defenses. I do think we all know he's got the arm talent, right? His problem was inaccuracy and making right decisions or quick decisions. And that'll catch up to you in the NFL also. And I think it will. But I'm not going to look at one sample size and him playing well in a Patriots preseason game and thinking, oh my, this guy could start for New England. I would be shocked if he wins a starting job in New England.
Wow. Strong.
I mean,
but the helmet's still awesome. The mini helmet autographed by Joe Milton.
Yeah. It's still good. And he's still in the NFL. Yeah.
That's right. Go ahead.
It's actually very funny because I'm the one who posed this question, Jimmy, which is that I was posing is this an indictment of Josh Heupel that Joe Milton is looking like a very good NFL quarterback when he struggled so much last year at Tennessee? I want to know your thoughts on this. I think it's actually, is this a vindication of Heupel? And just hear me out on this. We all criticized Josh Heupel for picking Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker as a starter. I actually criticized it at the time, and I think you did too, Jimmy, before we even saw them play that actual game. But Josh Heupel believed in him. Jim Harbaugh believed in him. Jim Harbaugh put a lot of resources in Joe Milton before he realized he couldn't work with him. And now the Patriots are believing in him to a certain degree, or at least giving him a serious look. Does this prove that Josh Heupel deserves a bit of a break for falling in love with Milton because he's just that irresistible to any coach or GM that he goes to?
Yeah, Caleb, I could see where you would be enamored with the arm. Look, and the guy's pretty fast. We saw that. Was it Texas San Antonio where he ripped off like an 80-yard run first play of the game? I mean, he had speed. I saw some of that speed in practices. Now, the speed in the practices we saw in the media were non-contact, and typically it was nobody's going to get tackled. And a lot of times there was nobody defending the receivers when he was throwing passes. And that's not a good way to gauge whether a guy can play quarterback or not. I can see them falling in love with a lot of aspects of Milton's abilities. But to me, he didn't fit the system because he's not that accurate. He didn't throw well on the run for the most part. He was not a quick decision maker. He wasn't very good in the zone read. All of that's a part of this offense. All of that which Hooker could do. All of that which I think Nico can do, but not Milton. So, Heupel wasn't going to change his system for Milton. But he did believe in his arm and he did believe in his athletic ability to the point where, and here's the thing too. I get starting Milton last year. I think you can make an argument at some point that maybe you should have gone to Nico at some point during the season. When that, you can debate about when that might have been, maybe after the Missouri game. But I could see, to your point, Caleb, I do think it's understandable why Heupel fell in love with him because other coaches have fallen in love with him too.
Jim, I posed the question or the statement yesterday that I think Nico's season will be as good or comparable to the 2022 season with Hendon Hooker, because I believe Nico has more ability than Hendon Hooker. I realize that was a record-breaking season. Feel free to call me crazy if you want. Am I crazy for saying that's a possibility?
Dave, I think what we're going to see is Nico's going to be closer to the Hendon Hooker of 2021.
Okay.
And then in another year, he'll be like the Hooker of 2022. I don't know that as a redshirt freshman with that lack of experience, he's going to jump in there. See, for him to match what Hooker did, 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, 69% completion percentage, I think, 46 points a game, 525 yards a game. I don't see Tennessee or Nico doing that the first year. But could he do it in 2025? I think he could.
Caleb?
Jimmy, I'm taking the leap. I'm saying if Nico is as good as we're saying he is, and he's had a year in the system with Josh Heupel now, and I've told you I think he's created in a lab to run this offense. We had this question yesterday. Tell me if I'm crazy. I said yesterday, you'll think Nico Iamaleava is better than Hendon Hooker after the Oklahoma game at the end of September.
Okay, I will say this. A lot of times in a lab, it takes them 2 years to find that solution.
That's right.
Not one.
Yeah.
Not 4 games. It takes them 2 years.
That's right, Caleb. You don't just put something in a Petri dish and figure out what you got.
No, this is one of those Food Network cooking shows. You got 30 minutes to put it together, and you put together that dish. Okay.
Dookie Chase down in New Orleans. It took him a while to put those recipes together.
Jimmy, I do want to ask you this question with what Heupel teaches, which I think is pretty basic in terms of reading a safety. And I think it was Caleb who had said that he only had to go to his second read. I don't know where you got that, Caleb, like 16 times or a rare amount of times. It makes things simple on the quarterback. At any point, could that be used against Josh Heupel? Hey, you're talking about a great developer of quarterbacks, but it's a great developer of quarterbacks in his system, perhaps not well-rounded to make the jump to the NFL.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair question. So I'll go back years ago. So do you remember when Texas Tech had quarterbacks that were putting up all kinds of crazy numbers? Cliff Kingsbury, Sonny Crumbly, Graham Harrell, and they didn't make it in the NFL. But then one of them came along named Patrick Mahomes. And he's arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, right?
Right.
And some people say it's not even arguable. So I do think the system at Texas Tech had a great deal to do with the numbers they put up. The system at Tennessee has a great deal to do with the numbers these quarterbacks are putting up, but it doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, that you can't go from that system you could go from that system and still be a really good NFL quarterback. I think you can do that. And Hooker may end up being a good NFL quarterback. I don't know. He's having trouble staying healthy. And I think Nico could end up being a really good NFL quarterback too. So I think the system can make an average quarterback look good, but I do think that the really good quarterbacks could play in this system and play in an NFL system.
So, Jimmy, if you were a quarterback right now, if you're a 5-star quarterback coming out of college or coming out of high school, and you have a choice, you can go play for Josh Heupel, who's going to help you put up 45, 50 points a game, probably send you to New York if you're fully healthy for the Heisman ceremony. Or you can play for David Cutcliffe, who may not help you put up 45, 50 points a game, but he's going to develop you the way you want to be developed for the NFL. Who would you rather go play for?
That's a hard question. I'll say this. If I'm a pro-style quarterback, I would probably want to go to David Cutcliffe. If I have good running ability and I'm a willing runner, boy, why wouldn't I want to go to Tennessee and average 46 points a game in that system? So I think it depends on the abilities of that quarterback. But if I don't like to run it a half dozen times a game, if I don't like to get hit running it, if I don't want to run a zone read, I'm going to play for David Cutcliffe.
Jimmy, Tennessee has 15 5-star quarterbacks lined up that they're about to take. I'm exaggerating slightly, but I do want to ask you who might be the odd man out. Jimmy's appearance brought to you by Ray Varner Ford.
Limited 4x4 $67,950. 2017 Ford F-150 Raptor SVT $41,950. 2023 Ford Escape ST line $28,940. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
If you had to pick who will be the odd man out, because you have McIntyre, Merklinger. We know Nico's not going to be the odd man out, but then you have Merklinger, you have McIntyre, and you have Faison Brandon. You had to predict right now who will be the odd man out.
I would go Merklinger because Nico's going to be your starter for the next 2 years, right?
Right.
And then McIntyre comes in. And if McIntyre's as good, or he may be as good or better than Merklinger, then what's he going to do? Now, do y'all think Nico's going to be here 3 years? Because I don't. I think it'll be here 2 years. Okay. And so then I think McIntyre's really good. So I think that it'll end up being Merklinger as the odd man out because I think McIntyre will be as good or better. And I think Tennessee will go in that direction, which will mean Merklinger will transfer to Kentucky, right?
Probably. Jimmy,
isn't that where quarterbacks transfer to, Kentucky?
Yeah, but then he'll be drafted by the Titans to replace Caleb's
you guys
favorite
really don't have to do this to me, okay? How many times will the Titans not listen to me? Excuse me, I'm just going to say it. I called Jake Locker being a bust. I'm calling Will Levis being a bust. And I called Marcus Mariota being a bust.
I think great days are ahead with Will Levis. Jimmy, last thing on Tennessee, the University of Tennessee. If they started the game tomorrow, would it be Merklinger or Gaston Moore that would run out there?
Say that again. If they started the game tomorrow.
Without Nico.
And they needed the backup. So,
Okay.
Let's talk about backups.
Gaston Moore.
Gaston Moore. I agree. Thank you.
I think it'd be Gaston Moore. He's actually looked good in the spring games and in the other scrimmages they've had. He's been in the system for 5 years. So I think that's the direction that they would go. Yeah, if Gaston Moore started this entire season, game one on, I think they could go 6-6. I don't know if they could do that with Merklinger, but I think Moore would be good enough to get you to a bowl game.
See, okay, Caleb, I want your take. Think about this for a second. I think they could still win 8 games.
With Gaston Moore?
Yes. That may be crazy, and I haven't really inspected the schedule like I did with Nico. Caleb, would you go 6, 7, 8, even 9?
I'd be conservative and go 6 again. I'm a little scared to say they could do 8.
I might settle at 7.
Yeah, I could go 6 or 7. 8 does seem like a bit of a stretch for me, but I mean, there are 4 games I don't think they would win: NC State, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, and then there are a couple of others that would be an issue. I would think, I think 6 or 7 would be my win total for Gaston Moore.
Well, you got to watch out for that. You know, Kent State's got a head coach who says he never wanted to be a play caller and study the field from the press box. So he's a real smart guy, and that's where Tennessee plays this year. And he could give Gaston more trouble. I'm sorry.
The best thing about that game is they're playing it at 7:45.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
I'd rather it be 7:45 in the morning.
Yeah, that'd be okay with that. I mean, how many people you think will be there in the fourth quarter of that game? Or in the second half?
Not many. Jimmy, your definition of retirement is different than most. You've been out there. How can people follow your work? You're at Jimmy Hyams and on the Twitter, and you've got more things going on. Tell us about what you're up to.
Yeah, the main thing is we're doing a podcast. I'm doing with Paige Dower, and we're interviewing a lot of sports celebrities, and we're putting it on YouTube. I'll tweet it out to tease it. We'll also have it on TikTok. Did you ever think, Dave, I'd be on TikTok? Yeah.
No.
So
good luck with that.
So we're doing that. Our most recent interview that we're launching tomorrow is with Tim Irwin. We have been, and by the way, Tim Irwin told me that when he was in high school, his favorite sport was basketball, and he was asked to walk on at Tennessee to play basketball when they had Ernie and Bernie. How about that? Could you see Tim Irwin guarding Bernard King?
No.
So he was asked to walk on. He didn't because Coach Majors didn't want him to. But we're launching that one Thursday. We've had Heath Schuler, Sterling Hinton, Roy Kramer. We've had a number of guests along the way that we've enjoyed having. Cooper Mays was another one that we interviewed. So, and we're launching them each Thursday. It's one a week, and we hope that folks will tune in. And then the Field Pass, Paige Dower has that, which you can also find on YouTube. So that's one of the projects I'm involved with.
Any others out there? Because you don't retire. Jimmy never retires. He just keeps grinding.
Well, my last golf talk show of the season is going to be this Monday.
All right.
So we're doing that. Sports Source on Sunday. So, there are a variety of things. And Off the Hook.
Sports. Yes, we love that.
In Caleb. It doesn't get any better than that.
We love that. Good to see you back. Go visit with that grandson and have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Caleb. Y'all take care.
Jimmy Hyams right there. What'd you think about the Gaston Moore at 6-6? Really?
I mean, look, okay, we already named 4 losses. Then you have to do the whole, okay, I know Florida's bad, but it's still Florida. I told you, I think Mississippi State's a scary team. And I mean, Kentucky Kentucky's a dangerous team. I don't think if you don't have the right quarterback, it's not like you couldn't have trouble with Kentucky.
I'm gonna ask this question: if Gaston Moore was UT starter, how many games would the Vols win? Because I'm back at 8. Would the Vols win? Okay, because I think we all think that he's limited athletically, and he is. However, Caleb, he also knows this offense better than maybe anybody walking the face of the earth. So I'm going to say if Gaston Moore is UT's starter, and this is on our YouTube page that you can vote for, how many games would the Vols win this season? 5, 6, 7, or 8. We'll do that. We remind you the portions of the program are brought to you by our good friend Medicare Misty. And Tennessee injury concerns coming up next. Who can't get hurt a la Cooper Mays in 2023? 30 seconds for Medicare Misty. I remind you that you need to listen because her services are absolutely free and she is licensed in over 40 states. So just because you might be watching in Tennessee, don't think you can't get help from Medicare Misty. Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, last year was thrown off. What the H today brought to you by Work Trucks by injuries. But the Brew McCoy, Cooper Mays, and I think there were a lot of nicks and bruises along the way, and there was an inordinate amount of those. I think Joe Milton was befallen by those at one point in the season. I think that Tennessee's receivers dealt with more than we mentioned, and Keenan Pili was out for the year. So we haven't said it enough, or I don't think it can be said enough. Injuries tore apart Tennessee's season last year, and it was still more than respectable. It makes you wonder what could have happened. But injuries are a part of every game. Before we get rolling here into the ones that the players that just absolutely can't get hurt for the Vols, my question for you, Caleb, is this. Is Tennessee's roster in a significantly better shape to handle an injury than it was just last year? I'm talking about significantly better, not a little bit better.
Is the roster better equipped to handle injuries? That's what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Significantly more so. They are better equipped to handle injuries. Now, before I want to clarify, when we get to this list, this isn't just a list of players Tennessee can't afford to lose. That's a different list. This is players who it's a combination of you can't afford to lose them, and they already have an injury history. So there is a concern there.
Okay. You've got Brew McCoy at number 5. He suffered the injury last year. I will tell you, this is not a concern for me because of him coming back. It may be a concern that he loses a half a step. I think that happens with NFL players throughout their career, and when they get hurt, they get a little bit slower because of injury. I don't think it's going to be noticeable at the college level. I think he's relies on his physical prowess anyway and his physicality. He's a great blocker. So I'm not worried about this injury whatsoever with medical technology being able to put legs and ankles back together.
I think, but see, I agree, but that's the concern. I think losing a step, here's the thing. When you lose a step that you're not used to having lost and you're trying to do the same things you were doing before, sometimes that can cause more injuries down the road. And I mean, look, I was a Ken Griffey Jr. fan growing up. He had one hamstring injury, and every way he stepped after that caused another hamstring injury because he couldn't do athletically what he was doing before when he was playing center field. And I got to say that's a concern with Brew. Now, the reason he's down at number 5 is because, let's be honest, Tennessee is so loaded at receiver this year. The question is, do they have a receiver that we know for certain can dictate coverage the way Brew McCoy does?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Ken Griffey Jr. because I was going to mention him because one of these guys is like Ken Griffey Jr. Keenan Pili is next. This is not as big of a concern. Now, he is beloved by his teammates. However, I think Jeremiah Thielander could provide a good backup. So not nearly as concerned about Keenan Pili as I was or would have been last year had I known that he was going to go out and had I known that he was going to be accepted into the program quite as much. But I'm not as concerned because I think Thielander's about ready to play.
I agree. That's why I had him down at number 4, and not higher, because as Peely is similar to McCoy in that the loss is it would be more the loss of how great Peely is more than how much Tennessee is in trouble if they don't have him, because Thielander, I do think, can fill the void. He's emerged in the spring. There's a reason Elijah Herring hit the transfer portal, guys.
Well, so far, my concern level is nil. Now, while my concern level on this next guy has to do with Ken Griffey Jr. Part of the reason Ken Griffey Jr., hamstring or not, but part of the reason that he was hurt all the time is because he played so darn hard. Arian Carter plays with his hair on fire, just like Ken Griffey Jr. So this is my first one where I'm a little concerned about, just because he plays so fast and so hard. I always kind of worry about these guys. He reminds me of the 98. And I know I go back to 98 a lot because that was the first team I covered full time. But I go back to the 98 linebacker group, and they were all banged up because they played so hard and so fast. I mean, they were banged up the whole year, every one of them. So I think Arian Carter, with the way he plays, is going to be banged up, and you just cross your fingers it's nothing that causes him to miss time.
I agree, and it's hilarious that you say that because, interestingly enough, Ken Griffey Jr., one of his injuries I'll never forget was he was trying to beat a ground out throw to first in a preseason spring training game, and he hurt his hammy trying to beat the throw.
Arian Carter is the type of player, and I mean this is the biggest compliment, guys. He's the type of player that could pull his hamstring running down an interception because he plays that hard. All right, more players we're going to keep an eye on that have injuries.
Well, I also just, the reason I brought up Arian Carter, because we have to mention this too. The reason it's not just his play. He got hurt last year with a season-ending injury. And while Thielander is a proven commodity to back up Keenan Peely, there's nobody that we know could back up the Mike linebacker spot yet.
Yeah. Lance C says can't lose Cooper, Peely, Mays, or any starters at offensive tackle. We're going to get to those guys, of course, 15 seconds from our good friends at Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Caleb, the next on your list, Javontes Spraggins. Why?
Yeah, so Javontes Spraggins suffered a season-ending injury down the stretch of last year. Tennessee already has depth issues at the offensive line, and Javontes Spraggins is, in terms of run blocking, probably the most important consistent run blocker for Tennessee. He is the guy that could make Jabari Small look like an all-SEC back in 2022. That's not a shot at Jabari Small. Jabari Small is a solid back, but Jabari Small has certain physical limitations that Jalen Wright didn't have. But Jabari Small in 2022 looked almost as good as Jalen Wright in 2023, and that's because of Javontes Spraggins' run blocking, which was superb. I see NFL starting potential in Javontes Spraggins.
Okay. If we get to, before we get to number one, and I think we all know who it is, here's the question that I have. If Gaston was UT starter, how many games would the Vols win? That's on YouTube. Vote now, please. Right now, 8 is the leader with 56%, maybe some optimism. 7 next. Nobody's voted for 5, and then 4% for 6. I do think it would be 7 or 8. But let me ask you this. If Cooper Mays won the lottery tomorrow and decided that he didn't want to play football anymore, where would you put Tennessee's win total?
Man, I'd probably go 9. And the reason I'd go, I again, Cooper, this year's Tennessee team is not last year's. Not that Cooper Mays isn't valuable. With Cooper Mays, they're going undefeated. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'll tell you guys my predictions later next week. But I would, so it's not that Cooper Mays is not significant, one of the most important players on the team. But I do think that Nico is much more capable of offsetting weaknesses on the offensive line and in pass pro and things like that than Joe Milton was. And
okay,
because
so you
of
think
that,
this is more Nico can offset it than whoever fills in for him? Because I don't feel good yet. I know we talked about William Satterwhite.
Yeah.
I know that I think he's going to be really good, but I don't think he's ready yet. And I got questions about Boston Lang at backup center. So you may have to go Dane Davis, the 7'8" center. I mean, I don't think you want to do that. So there would clearly be a drop off in play and in physicality and ability.
Yeah, there would. I just think this year Nico could offset a lot of that. Look, guys, I think Nico's that good. I do. I think he's the Citrus Bowl is one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen by a quarterback in his first start. Okay. And I really think I keep harping on it, but guys, I can't be higher on Nico Iamaleava than I am. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it will be possible to do for Josh Heupel what Nico Iamaleava is going to do in that system. I think he will maximize what's possible.
Yep. Caleb is definitely high on Nico. Speaking of the Hemp House, a premier hemp dispensary with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. You can order there. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. HOOKED for 10% off. And again, we want you to go to Hemp House Chat, which is right down below. What other players are you concerned about that may not have an injury history? Obviously, Nico is the one that you would hate to lose, and it would derail the entire season. But are there any other guys out there? I think you're getting to a point in the secondary where you would hate to lose like a Boo Carter, and I know we're talking about a freshman or a Christian Harrison that's going to step in. I think you could be getting a little thin there. And then really, I could argue that any offensive lineman you don't want to lose to injury. Again, some have injury histories, some don't. But that's what you don't want to lose, right?
Well, I mean, that's where we get to our lead guy after Javonte Spraggins, because we got to start with Cooper Mays, who is number one on our list of this. Right. Cooper Mays is the biggest injury concern for Tennessee because he has missed serious time out of the last 3 seasons. And as you pointed out, there is no true backup. So yes, Cooper Mays is number one, but I'm with you. I think the whole offensive line is a concern. If you're talking about just guys you don't want to lose, the whole offensive line, you're scared to lose anybody in the secondary. I think they can, like, James Pierce is a guy that you should be scared to lose because of just how generationally elite he is. But it's not like there's not good, productive edge rushers behind him. It's just James Pierce is so generational. But Dave, I got to be honest. I think Jordan Ross might be generational too. So I think
I've made a couple of phone calls on Jordan Ross, and you may be onto something there, if I may share that.
Yeah. So I think the only reason James Pierce starts over him, I mean, it's not that James Pierce isn't better or as good. It's just that the experience factor. He's the older guy. But I think if you just threw them all out there, I think Jordan Ross is, guys, we're talking, I put it this way.
Don't use the word generational. We use that too much.
You told me the story, but wait, sometimes you have 2 generational ones. You told me the story, Dave. Everybody was high on John Henderson. Everybody loved him. He was the Outland Trophy winner. And you said 2 guys came up to you and were like, this guy Albert Haynesworth's actually better.
Yeah, has a better sting, has more fast twitch, which is pretty remarkable. I tell you what, they have fast twitch, they've got slow twitch, they've got every kind of twitch because they have
twitch softball.
Over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow them on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. That's Sports Treasures daily updates. If you follow them on Facebook, Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN, over 35 years right there. So the end-all be-all of this discussion and why Tennessee's roster is so different is certainly if Georgia lost Carson Beck, we would look at their season differently. Certainly if Tennessee lost Nico, you would look at their season differently. Outside of that, though, and I'm not comparing Tennessee's depth to Georgia, there is the sense that there could be a next man up philosophy at most positions. I'm still going to say other than center, but at most positions, I think Tennessee certainly don't want to lose the starter. Would take a step back, but would not take a major step back like they have at times. For instance, when they lost Keenan Pili and then Arian Carter got hurt shortly thereafter, the linebackers were a mess. I don't think you're going to see that other than the center position this year if there's an injury concern.
I'm with you on that. I'm thoroughly with you on that. I will say that where it's different with Josh Heupel is it always can be a scare if you lose the quarterback, particularly when you have a guy like Nico Iamaleava. This is maybe a topic for another day, Dave, but I think elite quarterbacks at a place like Georgia actually sometimes hold the program back. And what I mean by that is, and we saw this in Tennessee in the 90s, when you're a team that's built just on overwhelming everybody else with talent all over the field, sometimes when you have an elite quarterback, the rest of the talent takes a little bit of its foot off the gas. Alabama did that with Bryce Young. And I'm starting to wonder, do you think Georgia might do that with Carson Beck?
Well, I mean, they could. If I'm Georgia, I'm more worried about the way they drive around in their vehicles.
Well, I just think in the 90s, like, look, I'm going to be honest, and some people may disagree with me, but I do feel like in 97, some of the best athletes who were NFL stars playing with Peyton Manning took their foot off the gas just a little bit because Tennessee put so much on Peyton Manning to succeed.
Okay, I wouldn't argue with that, and I think the coaches did that to a fault, but we're not comparing Carson Beck to Peyton Manning, right? Peyton Manning made some big-time throws as a freshman that you said he can play. We think Carson Beck's very good.
Right. No, I'm saying, though, when teams loaded with talent all over the field that win by overwhelming, when they have an elite quarterback, sometimes they lose the edge of that elite talent elsewhere. I'm going to be honest, I think 2021, 2022 Alabama, you almost felt bad for Bryce Young, didn't you? Because the rest of the team just took their foot off the gas and put it all on him, even though they had a lot of talent.
I would actually argue they didn't have as much talent they usually did that particular year. 2 minutes, though. Let's do this, because in 2 minutes, we're going to tell you this day in Tennessee football history and what would the Vols be valued at, because the Dallas Cowboys worth a staggering $10 billion. I don't want to oversell it, but you're not going to believe this day in Tennessee football history. Up next with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports. Please hit that like and subscribe button and know that you can find us wherever you podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever. He's Caleb. I'm Dave, Off the Hook Sports.
45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
23 F-150 Super Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Optimistic fan base, as our poll question brought to you by TriStar Hats said, if Gaston Moore was UT starters, how many games would the Vols win? 8 says 60% of those voters. 7 said 33% of those voters. 3% said 5, and 3% said 6. So there you go. Brought to you by TriStar Hats. For the latest in TriStar Hats, go to the original hats, apparel, and more. TriStarHatsCo.com. TriStarHatsCo.com. It is time for this day In Tennessee sports history, Caleb Calhoun, what do you have, sir?
On this day 7 years ago, Butch Jones worked up the courage at a press conference to address his cheesy slogans. At this point, Tennessee, after failing to win the East when they were a top 10 program, he said it's okay because they're the champions of life. And then when Tennessee had a very disappointing recruiting class in March the following year, he said, we're not looking for 5-star players. We're looking for 5-star hearts.
So it was this. How did he address it?
He was finally asked about it, and he said, quote, I kid you not, he said, I kind of chuckle because I've educated some of the members of our local media that every coach has those. For some reason, at Tennessee, it's all kind of blown out of proportion because that's the one topic to talk about.
Did I tell you that when he was on Alabama staff and they were playing at Neyland Stadium one year that he went up to a reporter, and Tennessee was struggling at the time, and he said, I had you guys at 9 wins, but that wasn't good enough. What do you think about that? That's how insane that man was. No, that's not good enough. If that's the high water mark, no, then you're not the coach.
No. And by the way, you had him at 9 wins, right? That was the high water mark. And a year later, you went 4-8.
Okay.
So,
what was the worst Butchism? I've got 5-star hearts, champions of life. Then we got to include brick by brick, right?
Oh, brick by brick, yeah. Ooh. And then those
okay.
Those are the top 3. Inches make the chain? I don't know. He did say inches make the chain one time.
Third down for what?
Maybe third down for what? Okay. Now, the same day this happened.
So how did he address it? How did he address his? I mean, was he asked about the Butchisms?
Yeah. It was a press conference, and he basically said that he said he had to educate local media that all coaches do this. That's what he said. He said he had to educate us, Dave.
You know what it was before it was brick by brick at Cincinnati, don't you?
What?
Pull the rope. You can go back and look it up. Yeah, it was pull the rope. What was the worst Butchism? That's on our YouTube page. 5-star hearts, champions of life, brick by brick, third down for what? By the way, how much cooler is Neyland Stadium now than it was when they're going to third down for what? I mean, it is awful. And Sterling Hinton is so good in whatever he does, and he's so involved. It is absolutely fantastic.
So I also have to address this. On this day, when he was defending himself back during this time, he unveiled Tennessee's 2017 motto. And it was going to be called Dat Way, an acronym spelling out details, accountability, and toughness. At the time, there was a very catchy Migos song called Dat Way that I used to like. So he decided his slogan for his team would be Dat Way.
Boy, what a bunch of smoke and mirrors with no substance. But things seem to be going well at Arkansas State, right? What was his record last year there?
6-6, bowl bound, baby. Bowl bound. You know, he took over a team that had gone to 9 bowl games in 10 years. And on year 3, he got him back to a bowl game. He really instituted a culture of winning, Dave.
There you go. Have we done what the H yet?
Probably, but you can always what the H because we just make half of what we do on this show is make fun of people. So
yeah. Today's tough question is now, and it's brought to you by our good friend Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Look over my shoulder and you can see the fantastic Power T cufflinks. Also, they have the Power T necklace just over my shoulder, and they've got that State of Tennessee pendant. That's awesome. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They have the fire opals that are phenomenal. Today's tough question has to do with one of the Vols kind of rivals.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Want to have some fun with this one, if you don't care. Shane Beamer says Neyland Stadium was the loudest stadium that he played in last year. All right. We like making fun of Shane Beamer, but we're actually not going to do that. I ask you in the message board, and then I want to turn this into a poll question. What's the loudest that Neyland Stadium has ever been in your lifetime? Mine, it's undoubtedly the 98 Florida game. And I've talked to Philip Fulmer about this. He thinks that they may have had some people that started jet engines outside the stadium. He literally is not sure, but he's heard that rumor. It was bizarre loud, like a little scary loud. Like if there are any structural defects in the press box side of Neyland Stadium, I'm scared that type of loud. So that would be mine. I imagine a lot of people would have Alabama 2022. Caleb, when do you think that Neyland Stadium's been the loudest? And then we'll turn to our message board and get some thoughts there.
So my brother would probably say the 2004 Florida game where James Wilhoit kicked the field goal to beat them after missing the extra point, the 50-yarder. Tennessee really owes Dallas Baker a lot of roses for that one. that personal foul penalty that should not have been called. But yeah. So I think my brother would say that one, and I heard it was really loud. I wasn't there. For me, actually,
I was there for that one. What year was that? Help me.
04 Florida.
Can I tell you the funniest part about that story is, and I'm sorry if I've told you this before, but after Will Hoyt hit that kick, he'd missed an extra point to tie it. We all know that. And I saw his parents, and their emotional swing had them like giddy. Like they couldn't even speak. It was just constant giggling that somehow they pulled that out of the fire. It was one of the neatest things to see. That I couldn't even interview them to talk about how big of a moment it was because they were just giggling the whole time. It's a great family. But anyway,
also, I want to throw another thing in it because we rag on him a good bit on this show, but that actually was that was Fulmer at his best because Will Hoyt missed the extra point and everybody was mad. And Philip Fulmer pulled Will Hoyt to the side and said, "James, we're going to give you a shot to win this for us. You're going to get another chance. Don't worry." And I don't know if anybody could psychologically get a kicker right to make another field goal after that the way Philip Fulmer could. So I give him credit for that. I would say, for me personally, the loudest I witnessed, it's actually in a loss. Do you remember when Tennessee played LSU in 2006 and Jonathan Crompton filled in for Eric Ainge? And he threw that touchdown pass to Robert Meacham late in the game that put them ahead. I remember the stadium exploding in that moment. And then Jamarcus Russell led a game-winning drive to win. But I thought when Robert Meacham caught that touchdown, that was loud. 2 weeks earlier, another loud one was when Arian Foster scored the game-winning touchdown for Tennessee to beat Alabama against Mike Shula's Alabama, which would be Tennessee's last win against Alabama until 2022.
Several people are throwing out some possible nominations on board. My nominations now on the YouTube page, if you want to vote, are 2004 Florida. That was the James Wilhoit game. 1998 Florida. 2022 Alabama. And then I was going to go other. No offense, but I'm not going to put a loss on here, Caleb.
No, I understand. I wouldn't expect you to. I think y'all's two are louder. I didn't experience 98 and 04 Florida. I experienced 2006 LSU. That's why I threw that one out there. We're named, but I agree. I think those are the loudest. 04 and 98, I would think, would be the loudest ones. Also, let's be honest, Dave, since they've expanded Neyland Stadium, and this started during the Casey Clausen years, Tennessee had a weird run where all their quality wins were on the road. So they didn't actually get a chance for the stadium to be loud because they oftentimes struggled for some reason at home against elite teams. Remember, I don't think Casey Clausen beat a top 10 team at home his entire time at Tennessee. He was a road warrior, but he wasn't a home warrior.
No, and that was interesting why Casey was so much better on the road. Neyland Stadium is an incredible home field advantage. And Shane Beamer saying Neyland was the loudest last year doesn't surprise me whatsoever. And that was also a revenge game. So when you look at the games this year on Tennessee's home schedule, what do you think might be the loudest of the group? Because South Carolina had some backstory to it because of what happened in 2022, the Columbia collapse.
Well, yeah, it actually was threefold. It was the backstory of South Carolina. Cooper Mays was back that day after being off all week or off all season. And Tennessee was honoring the 98 national championship team. And they donned the black jerseys. And just the combination, they just weren't going to. They were. And remember, you told me the week of, you said Tennessee is going to cover whatever spread Vegas sets. And I'll never forget you telling me that. And they did. And Vegas set a pretty high spread that shocked a lot of people. I think this year, I think you're going to see Alabama be loud again. I think Florida could be a very loud game because I do think Florida's a revenge game this year. I think Tennessee, and it's all the times they've lost to Florida over the past 20 to 25 years. I think last year is the one that angers them maybe the most because they just knew they were the better team last year.
Boy, I have trouble ranking those Florida losses. I mean, there's so many where Tennessee fans have gone into it thinking, hey, this is a cinch win, more than they should have. But last year was pretty painful. So I would rank it right up there. But, I go back to the Peyton Manning days when they fell down 35-0. You would think.
But that team won a national title for Florida, so you give them a break.
No, that's true. You have Florida, Neyland Stadium. You have Alabama, Neyland Stadium. Kentucky in Neyland Stadium. Mississippi State, Neyland Stadium. And then you have UTEP. You have Chattanooga. They're playing in Charlotte, as we know. You have Kent State at home. And I wouldn't expect it to be loud for one of the smaller opponents, but I think it's pretty much down to Florida and Alabama. And I think Alabama will be louder if Tennessee beats Florida, which will be the loudest to that point.
Yeah, I could see that. It depends on how. I mean, we still think Alabama will be good, and I think here's the funny part. I think there will be a lot of excitement for the Alabama game because I think this is the first time Tennessee fans will go win, not just thinking. I mean, 2022 felt good, but there was just a little hope that they could maybe make it competitive. This is the first time Tennessee's going in probably thinking, oh, we're not totally outmatched by this Nick Saban guy on the other side. We're like, we have to hope for a miracle to be in the game. An underrated time Neyland is loud, by the way, Dave, and I've told you guys this. October in Knoxville is the best setting in college football. And I think one of the tragedies of this year's schedule, they don't have a home game the weekend before Halloween. I always love when Tennessee has a home game at night the weekend before Halloween or the weekend of Halloween because the vibe is just so perfect. Like 2009 when Tennessee donned the black jerseys that you hated with Lane Kiffin.
Right. They look bad close up. I guess they didn't look quite as bad from afar.
The stadium, tell me the stadium wasn't lit though during that time.
Yeah, there were a few of the older sections, and I mentioned this to you before, that got up and walked out, but it was a very small minority. Really made the players mad, by the way.
Really? Well, those older fans don't even know history because Tennessee's original jerseys were black.
Were black, yes. I try to say that every day on the radio. I think I even wrote that. But I think the way they did all that made it incredibly loud. Now, my question is, Tennessee, how much more of an advantage do they have at Neyland Stadium when they're playing at night as opposed to the middle of the day? Because now you have that flex scheduling. So just to give you for instance, the Florida game could be 3:30 to 4:30 or 6 to 8. The Alabama game could be 3:30 to 4:30 or 6 to 8. Night games are a lot louder. I would think you would want to flex into that nighttime slot. It doesn't make it better for us, and I've heard from a lot of fans it doesn't make it better for them. But isn't Neyland Stadium loudest at night?
See, this is one of the advantages, I think, of Neyland Stadium. No. I think if it's a noon game, yes. I don't know many stadiums that are really loud for noon games in the South. Now, you go to the Big Ten environments, I will say, Dave, a Wisconsin game at noon might be the loudest place in the country, quite honestly. But the SEC, they prefer it later. But I do think Neyland's best setting is the mid-afternoon game. Because you forget, it's evening when the game ends. So by the fourth quarter, it is night and it's loud. I actually think that, and I think it's psychological, but I think the setting of Neyland mid-afternoon allows that stadium to get louder than most stadiums do in the mid-afternoon. Now, at night, LSU and Florida beat them. They do.
Fair. Other than a trip to Arkansas, how beneficial is it that Tennessee will be at home? Florida, October 12th, Alabama, October the 19th, Kentucky, November the 2nd, Mississippi State, November the 9th. They will be at home for a month before they play Georgia. How big of an advantage is that?
Well, I don't know how much of an advantage being at home is, as much as it is they're at home for 4 games and they get a week off. in between. But I do think that can lull you into a false sense of security to a certain degree. Particularly, I've told you, like when you come back from that Alabama game after you have a bye, Kentucky and Mississippi State are two dangerous teams. Now, I get it. People like to pattern match and they say, or create patterns out of things, and they say Tennessee always beats Kentucky. And you're right, Tennessee always beats Kentucky. But that doesn't mean that that's not a dangerous game if you don't take it seriously. And Dave, you covered some Tennessee teams that even though they always beat Kentucky, where Kentucky put up a real fight against them. And that becomes a problem.
Kentucky would always play Tennessee tough, and they're going to continue to do so. It's absolutely monstrous for them to be able to win that game. It's monstrous if you're a contractor that you get in touch with work trucks. Work trucks, all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle. Now, time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. If you're a contractor, please listen to me. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an Apide work bodies are all there. No dealership runaround, no run around going back and forth from the job site to wherever you might pick up your supplies. That's because you can have it all in your truck from Work Trucks. Carries the trucks that your business needs. You need Work Trucks with an X, Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktruckswithanx.llc.com, worktruckswithanx.llc.com. Work Trucks will make sure you have the perfect vehicle you have to have. They'll even find the perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with a T. WorkTrucksWithAnX.llc.com, WorkTrucksLLC.com. Proud supporter of the Tennessee Vols. The Vols, speaking of, may just be one of the teams on the rise. If you haven't read that column by Caleb Calhoun, I would highly suggest that. Let's discuss. 4 Downs is right now.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, let's get to 4 Downs. Define teams that are on the rise in 2024. Does that mean they had a horrible season last year? Is that a jump from an also-ran to a contender? Is that a jump from a contender to a champion? Caleb, what is the definition?
The definition is they are on the rise as a program to reach new heights that they haven't reached in a long time. And whether that be going from they've been a downtrodden 4-8 team and they're about to be a regular 8-4, 9-3, 10-2 team, or they're a middle of the pack team now on the road to becoming a championship contender. And it can't just be for this upcoming year. They're on the rise in the sense of they could do more beyond this year. That's why I left Colorado off the list, because I actually think Colorado will be better this year. But I think Colorado is going to fall off after Deion Sanders leaves.
All right, let me ask you this. I agree with that. So let's go now to 4 Downs, brought to you by our friends at Work Trucks. We mentioned them, and Cooper Mays will set us up. Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. By the way, you can vote on the loudest that Neyland Stadium's ever been. We've got 2004 Florida, 1998 Florida, 2022 Alabama, which has the lead at 57% of the vote. Other as 9%, then 1998 Florida, 35%. None for 2004 Florida. Guys, it was loud. That was great drama. So what down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
The teams that are most likely to be on the rise and make a jump. You have at number 5 whom?
Georgia Tech. Now, guys, this is scary for Tennessee if you're a Tennessee fan, because I'm just going to tell you, we just talked about a 5-star offensive lineman, Josh Petty, on Monday on our Hooker's Corner recruiting video. He just committed to Georgia Tech. This is a really underrated story. Brent Key, their coach, stepped in mid-season in 2022 after they had fired their previous head coach, Jeff Collins, who was horrible. They had been horrible for a while. Brent Key went 4-4 that year. He then went 7-6 in 2023. Now he's got the 20th ranked recruiting class nationally. Dave, 4th best in the ACC. And that's, look, if Georgia Tech were to make a run ever and show that they're a legitimate threat, guys, they're in the state of Georgia. They're in Atlanta. There's a lot of talent they can pluck.
Here's why I completely disagree with you. Because I think if anybody has success at Georgia Tech, they'll go elsewhere because they've then built those recruiting ties in the Atlanta area. And for instance, if Josh Heupel went to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys in 5 years, if anybody's having success at Georgia Tech, I would call them. And I don't think Tennessee would be the only school that would be interested, because you're overcoming a lot to get kids to stay at Georgia Tech, because their facilities ain't great.
Maybe they're going to get serious. And for those who don't know, Georgia Tech, the stadium is named after Bobby Dodd, a legendary Tennessee player who built a dynasty there for a while.
Well, listen, you better be serious. I mean, you better be, or you're going to be the second level of team. And Georgia Tech, those kinds of programs, Vanderbilt, Wake, an NC State, perhaps. I mean, those are the type of programs that if a super conference hits, they could be left out. What down,
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
I want to see where Tennessee falls on this list, so please hit like and subscribe. All right, so teams on the rise. Who is number 2, Caleb? Or who's number 4? Excuse me.
So number 4 is a shocker again, Northwestern. Guys, David Braun took over at Northwestern after the total Pat Fitzgerald disaster and went 8-5. Northwestern was ahead of the curve in college football unionizing. They could be, Dave, with the new Big Ten, and this is the truth, that academic school that does very well, like what Stanford did back in the day with David Shaw before they fell apart. And there's a Tennessee tie. They have Mike Bahakian as their offensive coordinator. For those who don't remember, he was the offensive coordinator under Butch Jones, and Butch Jones was first hired at Tennessee, and Butch Jones kind of forced him out to make room for Mike DeBoer. And so there's a kind of a bit of a tie there, but this could be interesting. I'm going to tell you, Northwestern could be a little more interesting than you realize. They were in the Big Ten West last year because that was still a West. They were in there with Wisconsin and Nebraska. Both of them had first-year head coaches. Both of them you would think were better programs, and Northwestern did better than both of them.
Okay, Coop, what down next? I want to see where Tennessee falls.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right, who's third on this list as we count them down, and then we'll get to the top 2.
I hate to admit this, and he did make the worst call in history last year defensively in the Iron Bowl, but Auburn's on the rise, guys.
I agree.
Auburn's on the rise. You can say whatever you want about Hugh Freeze, and I will say a lot of negative things about that man. But homeboy knows offense very, very, very well, and he's now got a top 5 recruiting class at Auburn, and he doesn't really have to worry about cheating anymore. So,
well, that and let's give him credit for a second. He cheated to get them, but the guys he cheated on, the Laramie Tunzels of the world, the Antonio Connors of the world, they were all players. He's a great talent evaluator too.
He's an incredible talent evaluator.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually better than Jeremy Pruitt, who I think's a pretty good. So, I mean, let's not forget that the guys he cheated on, which risked his career.
You mean cheated to get, not cheated on, relationship-wise.
No. The guys he cheated to get, at least they turned out to be players, because if you're going to risk a lot, your evaluation better be spot on. All right, let's get to the top. Let's get to the top 2. Where do they fall?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Okay. I would have Tennessee number 1, regardless if that's the team we cover or not. Do you have Tennessee number 1? People can read the column at offthehooksports.com.
Yes, Tennessee's absolutely number 1. And this is crazy to a lot of people because they actually took a dip this past year. So they would have seemed more like they'd be on the list going into 2022, or maybe even after 2022. But I think, and I've told you guys this for a while, 2022 was a teaser for what Josh Heupel's trying to build long-term at Tennessee. And I always said, Dave, did I not say during that year that 2024 was the year? And
yes, you did.
2024 is here. I think this is the year where Tennessee reaches that next year. I'm giving you guys the perfect example. early Clemson, 2011 to 2013, they were giving you a teaser with Taj Boyd, right? What they were going to be with Dabo.
Yes.
They took a step back in 2014 with Cole Stout, which was kind of a transition year. And then 2015 came and they officially had arrived with Deshaun Watson. And they remained a staple of the sport for the next 6 years. I think this is Tennessee's 2015 year with Clemson, where they show they are fully right and they are fully there as a program, and they ain't going anywhere. And by the way, people will say, well, that was only 6 years at Clemson. Please, you'll take 6 years of that in any sport. In 2 national championships in 6 years, you're going to take that any day of the week.
No, I agree. Okay, so your team's on the rise. Here's where I agree with you. And
well, you left out one, though, before Tennessee.
Well, Ole Miss. Why did you pick Tennessee over Ole Miss at number 2?
So yes, Ole Miss is number 2, and I really debated putting Ole Miss on there because I thought they had an 11-win season last year. And Ole Miss could very much be like Missouri, which went 11-2. They could also very much be like Colorado, who I left off this list. But I'm a little bit different with Ole Miss, and here's why. I think Ole Miss, if they have given the risk that Lane Kiffin took, and he took a lot, and he's loaded them up with talent, if he's able to finesse that into like maybe playing for the national title or getting into the top 4 this year, you could see that be a springboard for Ole Miss to be very relevant for years to come with Lane Kiffin, particularly when the only school I think Lane Kiffin would bolt Ole Miss for after this year is Florida. I mean, where else would he go? And I'm not sure. We don't know for sure if Florida would give him the call.
No, we don't know that for sure, but I think somebody will. So I have to disagree with you on Ole Miss. I don't think Lane Kiffin's going to be there long term. So yes, they might have a little bleep this year, but they had 11 wins last year. So they might not even match that and still have a decent season.
But Dave, where's he?
I want to bounce on these other ones real quick. I'm going to agree with you on Auburn. I think they're trending up. Northwestern, I want to see more out of David Braun. Georgia Tech, I don't believe a coach is going to stay there long enough, but I will 100% agree with Auburn and Tennessee. Now, if Lane Kiffin, and I was told when Auburn made a run at Lane Kiffin that he really liked Oxford. I don't believe that, but if he really likes Oxford, and you could tell me that Lane Kiffin's going to be there for the next 5-10 years, then I would have Ole Miss on the list. But otherwise, I just don't know that, so I can't roll with you that far.
If Florida doesn't make the call to Lane Kiffin, say they go for Deion Sanders over Lane Kiffin, which, by the way, is possible, where would Lane Kiffin leave Oxford for that would be open next year? I mean, maybe Miami. Maybe Mario Cristobal would get fired.
I think he wants to be in the SEC for sure. I think he would take a lesser SEC job than what you and I would consider a better non-SEC job.
Well, I think Florida's the only better job than Ole Miss that's going to open up this year. And that's my thing. And Ole Miss is that second tier, but Dave, it's
so much could change. What if Kalen DeBoer said, this is too much pressure, I'm out of here?
Then yes, Lane Kiffin's going to Alabama. But I think I do believe he preferred Ole Miss to Auburn, because while Auburn is a better job, it's only slightly, and the pressure's a little less at Ole Miss. And I'm just going to say it. He's Lane Kiffin, and the girls in their 20s are a little more appealing at Oxford than they are in Auburn.
I will tell you the job he really, really wants is LSU. That's the job that he would really, really like to have. All right, so our poll question that's on our YouTube page: what's the loudest you've ever seen Neyland Stadium? 1998, Florida, 35% of the vote. 2022, Alabama getting 54% of the vote. I want to remind you, Hook's Hangouts Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org. The link is right down below, AsiaCafe.org. And also, I got to turn you on to the 6-to-1 Brazilian Cocoa Energy Booster Premix Instant White Coffee. Love it. The golden label coffee bag with Philip Lim's grandfather and grandmother on the bag. A great grandmother picture on the side of the bag, and his picture, who he's carried his family name, the Lim Dynasty and Company, which was established since 1909. You're going to be blown away by this coffee. It is fantastic. Go right down below, AsiaCafe.org, AsiaCafe.org. order the coffee once, you'll be ordering it over and over again. I can promise you that. Coming up, the Dallas Cowboys somehow are worth $10 billion. What? So what does that mean for college programs? Are there college programs that are worth hundreds of millions and perhaps more than some NFL franchises? And what is Tennessee worth? If you valued it like a traditional business, we'll discuss. Hang tight. 2 minutes with Caleb Calhoun. I am Dave Hooker. This is Off the Hook Sports.
Cab 4x4 STX, $45,985. 24 Ford Escape, $30,962. 24 Ford Maverick XLT, $32,720. Ray Varner Ford, your East Tennessee Ford dealership.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
All right, here we go. What are the Vols worth? Now that they've been able to pull some cash from Pilot, that should help their overall valuation. I have a rough idea. First, we want to get to the stat of the day, and that's brought to you by our good friends at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. I'll remind you that all you have to do is be a member of Hooker's Corner. It's that simple. You can be a member right there, and that is City Heating and Air Conditioning. I apologize, I clicked the wrong thing, but they are there for you as well. Integrity Matters, 50 years in East Tennessee, cityheatandair.com. But be a member of Hooker's Corner for free, and you're eligible to win the Great 8 Garmin Challenge, brought to you by Rick Terry. All you have to do is be a member of Hooker's Corner and a subscriber to this channel. That's it. It's all free. Now, if you want to win this awesome Joe Milton autographed helmet behind me, the mini helmet, the orange with a white stripe, you do have to be a paid member. Before that, you get a ton more recruiting information and a lot more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. So let's get to the stat of the day, Caleb. It's brought to you by our friends at Medicare Misty. Caleb, what do you got?
It is T. Martin days until Tennessee football kicks off, which is
17 days.
17 days. It is also August the 14th, 8/14. 8 plus 14 is 22. When
T. Martin blackjack, for the record.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It is a bust in blackjack. But when T. Martin set the record for most consecutive completions in NCAA history against South Carolina in 1998, he broke the record of 22 in a game, and he completed 23 straight. Would have completed 24 straight if David Martin did not drop his last pass.
That's accurate. All right. Stat of the day brought to you by our friend Medicare Misty, licensed in over 40 states, and can also figure out your Medicare questions for no cost to you. What is Tennessee's football team really worth if the Cowboys are worth $10 billion? 30 seconds.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Okay, so the Dallas Cowboys valued at $10 billion, which I would have to say,
that's crazy.
Yes, I would. But $10 billion with a B dollars. I've tried to do the valuation of Tennessee football. It's much more difficult since they're a federal institution or state institution. Caleb, but what do you think Tennessee football would be worth? $200 million is their annual budget. I think you're talking about $3, $4, maybe even $5 billion if it were a business. Am I crazy on that? Am I too high?
No, because here's the thing with the Dallas Cowboys is while they're valued at $10 billion, there's this backing of NFL TV deals that college football just won't sign, that if Tennessee were out on their own, they could sign for themselves. Quite honestly, if Tennessee were publicly traded, I mean, I don't think Dallas is, but if you get secure investors, there would be a lot of investments in Tennessee. I would easily
there already has in some sense NIL, right?
There absolutely have been. That 200 million number, guys, ain't all the money that's being spent for Tennessee. Okay, you have money being thrown at the program from investors, from boosters, from donors, from business people that want to see this program succeed extremely well so they can go to their offices in Nashville on Monday morning and talk to their other coworkers who graduated from Florida and Alabama and say, my team won over the weekend. That's how this works with boosters, right, Dave? Most of the time.
Yes.
Is they care the thing they care about most is having bragging rights when they walk into work on Monday morning. And they will throw some serious money at the program to do that. Now, Tennessee does have, look, the issue with all college programs is this. There is I'm a fan of this, but it does hurt your value. Every stadium's got a giant block reserved for a group of people in college that are just straight broke, known as students.
Right.
So it ain't like they can spend a ton of money on tickets to go to those games. And that does become a problem in terms of valuation because every single seat at an NFL stadium now is reserved for the 1%ers in this country. But, the universities have to, those pesky, regular middle-class students going to college, not making a ton of money, they got to reserve some seats for those guys. And so that holds back some of their value.
Portions of the program brought to you by Apex Apparel Group Design. 15% off your first order. Apex Apparel, but they do so much more. A one-stop shop for all brand supply products, not just clothes. Design, brand, and market your way. Unique products to promote your business with unparalleled customer service. A full on-brand supply company. You can call Tyler at 865-919-3001 below, and they will take care of your business or your spirit wear needs. 865-919-3001. Right down below. Tennessee's value is going to go up because of mandatory changes that they had to make to compete with the Alabamas and the Georgias of the world who are going to have on-field sponsors, who many will have like Kroger Field, where they'll lose the name of their school. Tennessee knows they have to generate revenue, and they're out ahead of the game. So while you and I may have had our qualms about certain issues with the Pilot and Tennessee agreement, I'll say this, and I think you would agree, something like that had to happen revenue-wise.
In this age of NIL, yes. And maybe I shouldn't speak so out of turn with it because I support athletes getting paid. I mean, I always have and I always will. And if this much money is thrown around to pay athletes, so be it. So I do agree. And like, you know, whenever you produce content, you rely on advertisers and partnering with companies. So I can't hate it too much. So I agree they're ahead of the curve. I just feel like they could have done a few things a little differently. Maybe not build a giant Marriott in front of Neyland Stadium to obstruct it from the river. That's going to be my
do you have more of an issue with that than you do the Neyland Stadium Pilot?
Yes, I have more of an issue with that than I do the Pilot thing. I have more of an issue with that than I do the Neyland Entertainment District, period. I have more of an issue with that than I do the Food City at Thompson Bowling. Now, they should have contacted the Thompson and Bowling families. I will give you that. But my issue, I mean, I want to say it, guys. I wouldn't have even minded the Marriott obstructed Thompson Bowling because, spoiler alert, Thompson Bowling Arena is kind of an eyesore from the outside. It ain't a pretty looking arena.
Let me ask you this one. They can increase their valuation by, and they're going to do this, by having a corporate sponsor for Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Now, Lindsey Nelson, I understand, is a broadcaster, but his name is synonymous with UT Athletics almost to the extent of General Neyland. Not quite on that level, but for those that know history, which I know Caleb does, do you have a problem with Lindsey Nelson being renamed? Because that's going to happen.
Not as much, but I will say that's I do because of my appreciation for what radio brought to the sport, to the sport. And for those who don't understand, radio broadcast is actually what helped make SEC football and sports such a big deal across the country. And go back and check out my history of SEC bias video. The thing that made Southern football popular was the 1926 Rose Bowl when Alabama was the first Southern team that wasn't an academic school like Tulane to go play in the Rose Bowl. They beat Washington, and that was the first radio broadcast Rose Bowl game. And Alabama, everybody in the South was listening to that game on the radio. So from that, I would have a problem with it, but I would understand it. I'll tell you what would make me madder. Here's what I'm really scared of, Dave. What if they change the name of the court at Thompson Bowling from the Summit? What if they take Pat Summitt's legacy away?
Oh, I think it's a matter of time till it's the Summit brought to you by.
Oh my gosh. See, that's going to be a problem. And that's going to be something that bothers me because Pat Summit's a different story altogether. That is a different story altogether. I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest figures in the history of sports, even though I wasn't crazy with how, take away her illness, I wasn't crazy with how she ran some things towards the end of her time at Tennessee. I thought she made some mistakes, but she still is the epitome.
Well, but here's the thing that you have to remember, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I did find a valuation, which I want to go through really quickly. This according to the NFL, NFL.com. So the top 20, Forbes actually announced this. So I'm going to see if I can pull this up. You might be able to help me, you might not, Caleb. Let me know if you can, because I'm having some struggles here. But you do have, okay. So you have Texas comes in at number one, worth 139 million. That's with 109 million in revenue and 82 million in profit. So here's what I'm going to do for the sake of this argument and the fact that Tennessee seems to be selling out a lot of its things. I've got Florida at number 6. I've got Alabama at number 2. I've got Georgia at number 8. We're continuing to go down the list as far as evaluations of stadium according to Forbes.com. So I'm glad I found this list. It took me a little longer than I thought. I got Wisconsin, with Washington going 16, 17. Maybe we'll do more on this tomorrow. South Carolina at 18, Tennessee at 20. So according to Forbes, Tennessee is not comparable to the elite football programs that it is competing against. So, Caleb, this changes my view in what Pilot and Tennessee is doing and what they may do with Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Listen, they're not in the ballpark, according to this Forbes report. Their team values $63 million. Start talking about other programs, they're based off double that.
Well,
does that ever surprise you at all?
It does, but I got to take that with a grain of salt because I've covered the overall revenue programs in Tennessee. I do believe on that. Now it's actually dead link right now, unfortunately. But like 247 Sports in terms of revenue has Tennessee at number 8 right now entering 2024. College sports programs in general ranked by revenue, according to the USA Today revenue database, which always comes out, has Tennessee at, I want to pull it up now.
Well, now let me be real
number
clear.
8. Yeah.
Let me be real clear. My numbers are football only. They're not entire athletic budget. So I know what you're talking about with the USA Today. So Texas is number 1 at 139 million, according to this Forbes report. Notre Dame 2, 117 million. Alabama 3, 110 million. LSU 105 million comes in at number 4. Michigan 104 million. Florida 94 million. Oklahoma 92 million, Georgia 91 million, Ohio State 83 million. Again, just the football program, not talking about the entire athletic department, but it's going to be about 50% of it. Nebraska, number 10. At 12 is Auburn, just over 77 million. And then you have Arkansas at 74 million. Following that, you have Southern California at 73 million, Texas A&M at 72 million. Penn State 71 million, Wisconsin 70 million, Washington 66 million. Then you have South Carolina at 65 million, Oregon at 64 million, Tennessee number 20 at 63 million. To me, that offers a fantastic retort to your argument that Danny White is treating this like an up-and-coming program. Because he's treating this like a program that's lagging behind its chief competitors in football financially.
I'm going to tell you, this is a Forbes estimation, guys, not a revenue tracker.
I agree.
Forbes, I'm not criticizing them. It's like I don't criticize recruiting services. They do what they can with their information on star ratings, but there's just some things they're not going to be able to quantify, right? When they give players star ratings. There's some things Forbes is not going to be able to quantify, and they quantify them, and there's estimations, and those estimations can be off. I'm just going to tell you straight up, not to like fake news this, but I don't believe this. I don't believe Forbes on this. I think they're misevaluating certain things related to Tennessee that we just can't see and that they can't see. And I'm not blaming them. There's just some things they can't see related to the program.
The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Go to banksandjones.com as we're now 17 days away from football time in Tennessee. So it's getting big time. Don't forget, banksandjones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney, they'll go to trial. Others won't. Banks and Jones. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation